Chapter 27, The Banker and the Blade. January 28, 1930, Prague, 4:45 a.m. The streets were empty as we crossed the square. Snow had stopped falling, but the air still bit down hard. We moved fast, quiet. 4 shadows with a plan sharpened by every corpse this conspiracy left behind. Krug's office sat above a storefront, discreet, rich, fortified. 2 guards outside, one stepped away to smoke. Mark took the other, fast, silent. By the time the smoker turned around, he found Gary's revolver pressed to his chest. "Don't," Gary said in German. The man didn't. We left him tied behind a delivery cart, unconscious. Picked the lock, 1 click, 2. We were in. The stairwell was marble. The walls were lined with portraits, dead bankers and living kings. At the top, we reached a heavy oak door. Chorus stopped. I hear voices. I listened. 2 men, Brandt, and another voice, low, accented. "Krug." Gary slipped a wire under the door and peered through the gap. "Ledger's on the desk," he whispered. Brandt's showing him the last few pages. "Time to end this," I said. Mark nodded. "Go loud, go clear." We kicked the door in. Brandt didn't flinch. Krug did. He stood too quickly, knocking over a glass of brandy. "Scism," Brandt said, calm as ever. "You're right on time." "Game's over," I said. He shook his head. "No, you've only seen the board. You don't understand the game." Mark leveled his gun. "We understand it ends now." Krug raised his hands. "I'm just a financier." Gary barked. "You moved the money that paid for 3 murders and 2 false wars." Brandt turned slowly. "I tried to warn you, Patrick. You're walking into the future with your back turned." I stepped forward. "You'll face trial." Brandt smiled. "I already did, in a dozen quiet rooms in cities you'll never visit. Verdict's in. No one cares." I looked at Chorus. She nodded, then shot Krug in the leg. He screamed and collapsed behind the desk. "Talk," she said. Mark restrained him. Gary grabbed the ledger and flipped it to the final pages, bank transfers, armament purchases, meeting schedules. Everything we needed, everything they'd kill to bury. Brandt didn't move. "You won't leave Prague alive," he said. I walked over. Then I hit him, hard. He dropped, alive, but down. "Let's see if anyone still believes in justice," I said. Gary stuffed the pages in his coat. Mark grabbed Brandt. Chorus wiped down the desk. We vanished into the dawn, dragging the truth behind us. Chapter 28, Tides Turn. January 30th, 1930, Atlantic Ocean, en route to New York. The sea was rough, gray skies, sharp wind, the kind of crossing that makes you question every decision that brought you to this moment. We stayed in second class, fewer questions, fewer eyes. Brandt was locked in the cargo hold under federal escort. 2 agents, personally assigned by a U.S. senator who believed just enough to act and just enough to be afraid. Krug had been left behind in Prague, alive, limping, and likely screaming for silence. But we'd gotten what we needed. The last signatures, the coded payments, the receipts of betrayal. Gary stayed glued to the ledger pages every night in our cabin, cross-referencing each number against his handwritten cipher notes. Mark rarely slept. He stood out on the deck, watching the ocean like it might deliver one last enemy. Chorus kept to herself. She was already planning for what would come after. And me? I wrote. Typed reports, redacted letters, names, timelines, a full dossier to be handed off the second we hit New York Harbor. Because even with the truth in hand, we weren't safe. Not yet. We had to survive the arrival. On the 4th day at sea, the wireless operator brought us a note, typed from Washington. It read, "Do not land at Pier 18. Intercept planned. Divert to Naval Dock. Trust no civilians." That was all. Gary looked up from the paper. "They're still trying to shut us down." "No," I said. "They're trying to erase us." Mark cracked his knuckles. "Let them try." That night, we burned the original ledger, page by page in a locked furnace room, but not before making 5 copies. 3 stayed with us. 2 went with diplomatic couriers bound for trusted hands. If they wanted to kill the story, they'd have to chase it across the world. We weren't just bringing back truth anymore. We were bringing back a storm. Chapter 29, Dockside Shadows. February 2nd, 1930, New York Naval Yard. The sun was still low when we saw the coast. Gray skyline, cold wind, the Statue of Liberty barely visible through the haze. But we'd made it. The ship was rerouted just as the telegram said, to a secure naval dock, guarded by men in U.S. Navy coats and eyes that didn't blink. We disembarked slow. Brant was taken off first. Still cuffed, still calm. 2 agents flanked him like statues. He didn't say a word, didn't look at me. But I knew what he was thinking. I've survived worse. Maybe he had, but not this, not what came next. Gary carried the locked satchel with 3 full copies of the ledger. Mark kept his hand on his coat the whole time, walked beside me, quiet, unreadable. On the dock stood a man in a long black overcoat, but one who clearly knew us. Scism? He asked. I nodded. He motioned us toward a waiting car. You'll be debriefed in Washington. No, I said. You'll take this. I held out the satchel and deliver it to Senator Crowley's office. Personally, he's expecting it. The Admiral hesitated. Mark stepped forward. Now. He took it. Didn't ask questions. Didn't salute. Smart man. We rode in silence through the naval base, down side roads, across bridges no one else used, watching every intersection, every rooftop. By nightfall, we were in a safe house outside the city. Lights off, curtains drawn. Gary read the newspaper aloud. Senate inquiry opened into foreign influence on post-war military contracts. Confidential sources allege high-level collusion dating back to 1924. I leaned back. The story was out. Not all of it, but enough. Chorus handed me a sealed envelope. Your copy, she said. The one no one else gets. What do I do with it? She smiled. Whatever you want. Bury it, burn it, print it. I nodded. Mark stood and cracked his back. We done? Almost, I said, because tomorrow was the last day. And tomorrow I'd decide whether to finish this the clean way or the loud way. February 3rd, 1930, Washington, D.C. I stood on the steps of the Capitol just after dawn, coat collar turned up against the wind. It was quiet, too quiet for what we were carrying. Mark and Gary, weighted by the car, had already vanished, gone with the sunrise, no goodbye, no promise of return, just like she came. I held the envelope in my hand, my copy, the one with names, codes, faces, the one no one else had seen, the one that would finish the job. Or start something worse. Inside the Capitol, a Senate subcommittee was already meeting. Quietly, privately. They'd been given the files. They had the truth. And now they had a choice. Bury it, like so many before, or let it burn. I lit a cigarette and watched the smoke drift over the city. I could walk those steps, testify, let them pick it apart, or I could walk away. I could go home, try to forget. But I knew better. There's no forgetting the things I've seen. No silence thick enough to drown them out. I opened the envelope one last time, looked at the pages, the signatures, the blood baked into the margins. Then I turned, walked down the steps, and dropped it into a mailbox addressed to every major paper in the country. Let them fight over the scraps. Let them argue over the truth. Because some things aren't meant to be whispered. They're meant to be heard. I walked to the car, opened the door, and looked at Gary. All done? He asked. No, I said, just getting started. We drove away from the Capitol, past marble statues and stone lies, into a city that was about to wake up to something it couldn't ignore. Behind us, the ledger was over. Ahead, whatever came next. But whatever it was, we were ready. End of Book 1, Scism and the Ledger. Prologue, The Briefcase and the Fire. London, autumn 1924. The briefcase was black leather, hand-stitched, sealed with a clasp older than the man carrying it. It held no money, no jewels, just a set of papers, 16 pages, typed and initialed, wrapped in waxed string and marked with a name no one in Westminster dared say out loud. The man stepped off the train into the rain-slick platform of Paddington Station, flanked by silence and secrets. He adjusted his coat, ignored the gasps of two passing porters, and walked directly to a waiting Daimler with shaded windows. In the back seat, another man sat smoking a Turkish cigarette. "You've seen the list?" he asked. "I read it twice," the courier replied. "Didn't sleep either time." "Good, then you understand." The driver started the engine. "What if someone talks?" the courier asked. The smoker smiled faintly. "They won't. And if they do?" He tapped the briefcase. "We have a way of correcting history." The car disappeared into the London fog. 3 days later, a duplicate of that same briefcase rolled into St. Louis, beneath the feet of a prince, under the eye of U.S. intelligence, and into the path of a man who would spend the rest of his life chasing the sound of paper turning into war. Final chapter, epilogue, conversation with Sharon. February 5th, 1930, St. Louis. The city was still gray. It always had been. I met Sharon on the bench by the Soldiers' Memorial, just past dusk. She wore black gloves and a wool coat buttoned too tight. Her eyes didn't hold tears anymore. Just answers. "You said it's done," she said. I nodded. "As done as it can be. The men who sent the orders are either behind desks or under them." "And Jack?" I lit a cigarette and let the silence stretch. Jack never stopped fighting. Not in 1924, not when they came knocking again. He kept the truth alive long enough for someone to finish what he started. She looked down at her hands. I always thought he'd make it. He had a way of slipping through things. He did, until he couldn't. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small photograph, faded, creased. 4 men, me, Jack, Scott, Shane. "We were so young," I said. "You still are," she replied, "just buried under ghosts." I stood. "I'm headed east. Washington wants more answers. They'll get half-truths and smoke. And after that, maybe I go home. Maybe I stop chasing shadows." She stood too, and for the first time since we met, she smiled. Jack would have liked that. I tipped my hat. He'd have hated the paperwork. She laughed, and the sound echoed like something clean. We didn't hug, didn't cry, just stood there, watching the city remember how to breathe. Then I turned and walked into the dark. No medals, no fanfare. Just one man, one coat, and the fading sound of footsteps against the truth. Preview. Scism and the April Silence begins April 15th, 1930, tax day in St. Louis. The city was choked with carbon dust and courthouse lies, every mailbox stuffed with confessions, every clerk drowning in numbers that didn't add up. I wasn't thinking about taxes. I was thinking about sleep and bourbon. Then the phone rang. "Mr. Scism," the voice said, crisp as broken glass. "How much does a man's silence cost in this town?" Before I could answer, the line went dead. By the time I found the body, assistant treasurer for the city of St. Louis face down in his own ink. His pockets were empty, and his safe had been burned shut from the inside. Next came a city auditor, then a zoning clerk. 3 men dead in 3 days. All of them tied to a budget nobody could explain. They called it misappropriation. I called it a cover-up. The deeper I looked, the darker it got. Backroom deals, sweetheart contracts, entire streets paved with paper that never existed. Somewhere under the bricks, someone was hiding millions in public funds. Every file I opened led to another set of initials, and every answer I found came with a threat taped to it. Now the mayor's office wants the case closed. The papers say it's an internal matter, but the city keeps bleeding. And if the system's this crooked, then it's time someone started breaking the rules. The Prince of Wales you're referring to is almost certainly Edward VIII, who briefly became king in 1936 before abdicating to marry Wallis Simpson. After abdicating, he became the Duke of Windsor. and his relationship with Nazi Germany remains one of the more controversial footnotes in 20th century history. Here's what is known and documented. Sympathy for German fascism. In the 1930s, Edward expressed admiration for aspects of fascist governance, particularly in Italy and Germany, believing it offered stability amid European turmoil. Edward was anti-communist and saw the Nazis as a bulwark against Bolshevism, which influenced many elites at the time. Meeting Hitler. In 1937, Edward and Wallace Simpson made an unofficial visit to Germany, where they met Adolf Hitler. Hitler reportedly viewed Edward as potentially useful, especially if he returned to power in Britain. Photographs from the trip show Edward giving what appears to be a Nazi salute, something his defenders claim was a diplomatic gesture. The Marburg Files, 1945. After World War II, Allied forces discovered German documents, the Marburg Files, indicating that the Nazis had hoped to use Edward to broker peace with Britain. These files suggest that Nazi officials believed Edward might support a negotiated peace with Hitler if reinstated or granted political influence. Churchill's intervention. During the war, Prime Minister Winston Churchill feared Edward could be a propaganda tool for the Nazis. Edward was made governor of the Bahamas, a position that removed him from Europe and minimized any potential influence. Conclusions. Most serious historians do not believe Edward was an active Nazi collaborator, but many agree he was naive, reckless, and at least sympathetic to parts of Nazi ideology, especially their anti-communist stance. His behavior was seen as embarrassing and potentially dangerous by the British government, hence his rapid removal from European affairs. Welcome to Scism Detective Agency stories, where the fog is thick, the coffee's black, and danger is always a step behind. Step into the smoke-filled alleys and shadowed train yards of 1920s America, where every case begins with a whisper and ends with a bang. This channel brings you original noir audio dramas, serialized mystery stories, and voice-over narratives steeped in grit, espionage, and betrayal. Follow former United States Navy intelligence officer Patrick Scism as he uncovers dark secrets in the heartland of the American Empire. Whether you're here for old-school detective tales or period-accurate historical thrillers, you're in the right place. Like what you hear? Hit like, tap subscribe, and ring the notification bell so you never miss a case file. Drop a comment to tell us which mystery has you hooked or who you think did it. Coming soon, join the agency on Patreon. Want more stories, exclusive case files, behind-the-scenes content, and early access to new episodes? Our Patreon page is launching soon. Help support independent storytelling and get inducted into the inner circle. The cases are open. The city never sleeps. And you're on the list. Welcome to the Scism Detective Agency.